Together, me and you will share life's journey. Together we make it through. I will teach you right from wrong, be your friend all life long. We learn life's lessons together, me and you. In this life we must lean on each other. There's so much good things we all can do together. We'll read a book, tell a story, share a poem, take a journey, only me and you.
I wanna be like you, I wanna be like you. I wanna say what you say and do what you do like you. I wanna be like you, I wanna be like you. I wanna say what you say and do what you do like you.
My name is Mrs. Maria Angelita Magaña, and I'm here to tell you a story. So what time is it?
Story time!
Very good. So our story is called Tata Duende to the Rescue. Tia Elena and Carmen were walking home from school. Carmen, why are you always getting into trouble? Tia Elena asked as she held Carmen's arm. They were walking home from school. Every week I have to go to school for something. And today you are fighting. Really, Carmen? Girls should be ladies and never fight. Carmen didn't speak. She had her head down and dragged her feet as they walked along the street. Carmen, what will we explain to your uncle? And what will I tell your mother when she calls tonight? Carmen could hear the irritation in Tia Elena's voice. She sighed. It was always the same. Whenever she did anything wrong, the family would hold court. Tia Elena and Tia Enrique would talk for long hours and then punish her. Her mother would call from California and scold her and remind her to be a good girl. It was always the same. Mommy would say, Mija, your tia is doing us a big favor, keeping you there while I work here. You must be a good girl. Carmen was tired of being a big favor. She was tired of people telling Tia Elena it's a pity she didn't have a daughter of her own, but at least she had Carmen. Tia Elena and Tia Enrique had no children, and it was always a source of talk in the town that they did not know what to do with a child, and this is why Carmen was so out of hand. Sometimes Carmen would hear the comments, but today the fight was not her fault. Juan and Omar had started teasing her and pulling her hair, but the fight had really started when Juan told her that nobody wanted her, not even Tia Elena nor Tio Enrique. Carmen, go straight to your room and do your homework, Tia Elena said as they entered the house. Carmen spent the rest of her evening in the room thinking about a lot of things, but mostly she thought about what Juan had said. Maybe nobody really wanted her. She was always in trouble, Tia Elena said. So Tio Enrique never had much to say except to agree with Tia Elena and with Mommy. Well, Mommy was far away. These were the thoughts that were swimming around Carmen's head when she heard the car stop outside, signaling that Tio Enrique was home from school. She looked at the book she was working in and let out a big sigh. They would be talking about her. She knew it. Probably saying how disappointed they were in her. They might even be thinking about sending her to her mother. Carmen felt really very small as she thought about these things, as if no one would really care if she disappeared. She heard footsteps coming towards her door and then two steady knocks. It was Tio Enrique. She knew it. "Come in," she said, her voice squeaking just a little. Her uncle came in and sat on the corner of her bed. "Carmita," he said, "what happened at school today?" Carmen told him the entire story, and when she had finished, she saw her uncle looking thoughtfully at her. "Well, my dear, it seems as though I will have to go to school tomorrow and talk to your teacher about those boys. You should have explained it to your aunt before, but I think you have been punished enough, spending all the evening in your room alone." As he stood to leave, Carmen spoke. "Tio, am I really too much trouble?" Her big eyes were full, of tears as she spoke. Tio Enrique looked at her and shook his head. No, Carmita, you are just growing up. If you were really too much trouble, Tata Duende would come and take you, he said, almost laughing as he spoke. Who? Carmen asked, her eyes bigger now than they had been before. Carmen, don't tell me you have never heard about Tata Duende. The little girl shook her head and her uncle sat down again. Well, Tata Duende is a little man who lives in a bush and is very hairy. He has a big wide straw hat and his feet are backwards. He has no thumbs and he takes away bad children. Sometimes he brings them back, sometimes he doesn't. As he spoke, the Enrique hid his thumbs and made an ugly face. Are you saying that if I was really a bad girl, he would take me away? Carmen asked, suddenly afraid of this little man who could be in the bushes just outside of school. Well, he mostly takes little boys, but I guess he would take a little girl too and make her cook and clean for him, Tio Enrique explained with a laugh as he was really enjoying the story now. But if he is bad and in the bush, why don't people catch him or chase him away? Carmen asked. The more she thought of this mysterious figure in the bush, the more she didn't like hearing about him. Well, he is invisible unless he wants you to see him. Years ago, when the cane farmers would burn their fields, people would see him quite often. He would get covered in the ashes as he checked to make sure the fires were out. And there are stories of boys and girls who have seen him in the bush. Sometimes he is friendly, sometimes he is not. But if you ever see him, be sure to hide your thumbs. It always upsets him to see people with thumbs. Oh, and make sure you walk backwards. As he spoke about walking backwards, Tio Enrique began backing up out of the room and laughing. Your aunt will call you for supper soon, and you will do the dishes tonight by yourself, Carmita, he said as he left. The rest of the night passed quietly. Aunt Elena did not scold her anymore. Aunt Tio Enrique gave her a single shiny 50-cent coin and told her she could give it to Tata Duende and he would leave her alone. Aunt Elena told them both it was a bunch of nonsense, but she did not take away the 50 cents from Carmen. The following morning, as Carmen got dressed for school, she put the coin in her pocket just in case she would need it. It was during afternoon classes that Juan began to tease her again. He would get close to her and whisper, "Nobody wants you. You have bigger hands than any boy in the class. You must be a boy." But it was then, when he pulled her hair and ran away, that Carmen let her anger get the better of her, and she threw a huge rock at him, catching him right on the head. Juan fell to the ground, and the other children started rushing around and shouting, "He's bleeding! He's bleeding! Carmen killed him! Carmen killed him!" Poor Carmen felt like she couldn't breathe when suddenly she felt her friend pulling her on her arm. "Run home, Carmen! Quick! Tell your auntie what happened before they bring the police." Carmen didn't even know when she started running, but she suddenly thought how disappointed her auntie and her uncle would be. How would she explain this to them? Would they believe her? And then suddenly Carmen had an idea. She would hide in the bush until she thought of what to say. She ran back towards the school, turning right, and went straight into thick bushes that stood behind the school. She could still hear the voices of the school as she hid in the trees, and she started to cry. How terrible this day had become. She could probably never go home. Her aunt would tell her mother, and she would have nowhere to live. Tears were streaming down her face when she heard a soft whistle blowing through the trees. She looked up, thinking someone from the school could be coming. She stood up and decided to get moving so they couldn't find her and take her to jail for killing Juan. She moved further and further in the bush and still heard the whistle, but she could no longer hear the voices from the school. Carmen looked around and was not sure which direction she had come from. She sat down and started to cry again. She might have been there for a long time, or maybe just a little while, when she had the feeling someone was watching her. She looked up suddenly and let out a scream. In front of her stood a little man with a big hat, holding a stick in his hand. Carmen tried to run away, but she couldn't move. The little man began to walk around her slowly, and Carmen hit her thumbs, just as Tio Enrique had said. When the little man stopped in front of her again, he motioned for Carmen to follow him, and suddenly her feet began to work. She was walking behind him slowly, too afraid to talk. She just kept walking, realizing they were going further and further in the bush, and it was getting darker. The little duende stopped and pointed for her to sit down. She sat down, not knowing what to do, and the little duende went away but came back with 2 green coconuts. He gave her one and started to drink from the other. Carmen realized how tired and thirsty she was and started to drink from the coconut. When she had finished, the little duende cut it open and gave her the half so she could eat the soft white meat of the coconut. As she was eating, he disappeared and came back with some sticks and started a fire. Carmen began to think she would have to spend the night in the bush with all the wild animals and the mosquitoes. Tia Elena and Tio Enrique must be worried about her. She had to go back home, but how? The only one who knew the way was the duende, and he was not saying a word. Carmen thought of all the things Tio Enrique had said the night before, and suddenly she remembered the 50 cents in her pocket. She took it out, careful to hide her thumb, and set it in the dirt near the duende. "Please, Mr. Tata Duende, can you take me home to my auntie and my uncle? They will be worried." "I don't want to stay in the bush," Carmen said as she started to cry again. The duende picked up the 50 cents and bit it. He looked at her and turned his head from left to right and stood up. He threw dirt on the fire and stamped it out and started walking. Carmen jumped up and began to follow him. It was getting darker and he was moving quickly, and suddenly he was gone. "No, no, come back, Carmen cried as she looked around, and she suddenly felt strong arms shaking her. "Carmita, Carmen, wake up, wake up." It was Tio Enrique shaking her. She was seated under the big tree right at the entrance of the bush behind the school. "Oh, Tio, Tio," she cried as she put her arms around him. "I am so happy I found you." "Carmen, what were you thinking? You had us all frightened. Your aunt has been at home crying all afternoon." Tio Enrique spoke as he held her close. "Tio, I killed Juan," she said through trembling lips. "I really did." "No, no, you didn't. You just gave him a good reason to think because he teases someone." Again, Tio Enrique explained that the rock had scraped the side of Juan's head and he didn't even get stitches, but he did admit to being mean to Carmen. Tio Enrique shouted, "I have her, she's here." And to Carmen's surprise, a large group of people started coming towards them. All their friends and neighbors had come out to help look for Carmen when she could not be found at home nor at school. "I found her sleeping under the tree," Tio Enrique was saying when Carmen spoke up. "I wasn't sleeping under a tree. I was following Tata Duende back home. And he brought me back to you just like you said, Tio. When I gave him the 50 cents, he brought me back." Carmen spoke excitedly and the adults started to laugh. "No, no, Carmen, it was just a bad dream," Tio said. "And you have had enough excitement. We are going home now." Later that night, after she had taken a bath and had supper, Tio Enrique came to say goodnight. "Tio, I know you said it was just a dream, but I know Tata Duende brought me back. I took my 50 cents to school today and I didn't spend it. I took it out of my pocket and gave it to him. Well, it's gone. If I didn't give it to him, then what happened to it?" Tio Enrique looked at her thoughtfully and said, "Carmita, your aunt and I will give you all the 50 cents in the world to keep you safe. promise me you will never run away again. And if Tata Duende really brought you back, we will plant some flowers to show him we are grateful. Carmita, I want you always to remember that you are part of our family. We love you and we want you back. For the rest of the school year, Juan did not tease Carmen anymore, partly because he knew he was wrong and because the hurt on his head took 3 weeks to get better, but mostly because he had begun to wonder if Tata Duende really took away bad boys and if he was watching him. Carmen didn't tell a lot of people her Tata Duende's story, but the flowers in her little garden were the most beautiful in town, and she always made sure she had a 50 cents in her pocket just in case it was needed. Wire Ben?
Glorious!
In this life we must lean on each other. There's so much good things we all can do together. We'll read a book, tell a story, share a poem, take a journey, only me